Vibrant colour, simple design, distorted yet harmonious, totally modern. This was the visual equivalent of a love poem. Whether or not they were lovers, I don't know, but in a way it really doesn't matter because this painting embodies such feeling from Matisse. Matisse by now was in his mid-60s, and yet here he was, all of a sudden, rejoining the ranks of the avant-garde. Whatever harmony Matisse had found with Lydia was soon disrupted when the Nazis invaded France in 1940. Later that year, he was diagnosed with bowel cancer, undergoing major surgery in 1941. "Give me 3 or 4 years to finish my work," he pleaded to the doctors. He was nursed by Lydia, and together they moved to the town of Vence, 10 miles outside Nice. This was Matisse's house in Vence. It was built for an English admiral, and it was called Villa Le Rêve, which meant the dream. And Matisse moved here in about, well, I think it was 1943. He was scared of Allied bombing in Nice, where he'd been living in hotel rooms. And Lydia found this place and organised the move over here. In many ways, this house is quite unassuming, quite humble. Picasso came to visit Matisse here, and the first time he came, he couldn't believe that the great French artist lived in this place. He went up the road because he saw a more picturesque villa, and he had to be told by a neighbour, no, Henri, he's back that way. When Matisse lived here, he was incredibly weak. It was still only a couple of years after his operation for bowel cancer when he really nearly died. But here he found a new lease of life. He felt every day was a gift of new life for his work. He had this surge of energy to create a new body of art that was going to be incredibly important. Of course, it's not a private home anymore. They run art courses here. I'm going to meet someone called JillyBit.MPG, who's the current artist in residence. Was this Matisse's bedroom?
This was Matisse's bedroom. It wasn't his bed, but he did sleep at this end, apparently. There are photographs that show that. And then there was a space through to another room, which is now blocked off, where he did most of his work, where his birds were, and all his chairs and objects. He had quite a house full, I think, of people to help him. Lydia included. I've got pictures, actually, of Lydia.
He must have really relied on her in these years, because he was very frail by now.
She took care of his every need. She was his art assistant, his model.
And it's a real expression. I mean, so much concentration, and that's the kind of tenderness of love. I mean, she must have loved him.
She cared, yes, I think she must have loved him enormously. Here he is with a model, but he's studying her so intently.
He looks so professorial there, or like a scientist in his white coat. He's got a very stern expression on his face.
Very studious.
Staring straight at the mid-part of the naked model.
This is a very rare photograph of Matisse actually smiling.
But people say, you know, in private he could be a real joker, great raconteur. He was obviously very charming. It was in this house in his late 70s that Matisse painted some of his most intense and vivid works. When these were shown in New York in 1949, Matisse was acclaimed as the greatest living painter. It was also here that the sick and elderly Matisse came up with one of his most shocking and radical innovations of all, the paper cutout. No more drawing lines and filling in shapes with colour. Simply cut out and apply colour directly. Increasingly bedbound, the technique allowed him to continue his creative outpouring. This is one of his most famous cutouts of Icarus, a character from Greek mythology who plunges to his death after flying too close to the sun.
be made of Matisse's more simple work, that, a child could have done that, so we're going to get you to do that.
Am I allowed to cheat by looking at that?
Well, I don't know. Do you think we'll let you cheat?
No, I think that's probably...
Right, we'll turn it over then.
The masterpiece begins.
And these are very modern scissors you're using, very sharp.
I've got an advantage.
He's got long metal shears.
You need to be incredibly confident. Each cut has to be, you have to be totally sure of where you're going.
I think that's where the likening it to a sculpture is really the truth. I mean, you cut into a piece of marble. If you make a really bad judgment, you've lost a whole block of marble. When you try it yourself, I think you can then realise it's not as easy as he makes it look.
I mean, this looks like a piece of roadkill next to that. He's got much thicker thighs, and I've given myself a massive beer belly.
A torso, surely. The inclination of the head and the general, it's got a feeling of defeat. The weight is all at the bottom of the Icarus's body, and he's descending, he's coming down. There's a resignation about it, the inevitability of what's going to happen. What we forget is that we have this knowledge, this graphic language that we know, we understand. Everything we use, everything we touch has a logo or an icon that represents something. This at the time was so shocking, it was so bold.
This deceptively simple style Matisse pioneered still feels new and fresh today. It's everywhere, from the iPod ads to blue jeans, from the Olympic logo to the Festival of India. Matisse is still very much around. One of the few people alive who saw him making the cutouts is French painter François Gillot, who first visited Matisse in 1946 with Picasso when she was Picasso's lover.